Magic reveals itself to those who remember where to look for it. This is Magic Hour, and I'm your host, Taylor Page. Hello, my loves. I am your host, Taylor Page. Welcome to Magic Hour.
Hello, everyone. I'm Claire, your producer. Thank you so much for listening.
I'm so excited for today's topic of ancestral healing, and we have the most beautiful guest inside and out. But before we get into that, I just want to talk a little bit about ancestry and thinking about our lineages and where we come from. And I've always been really curious about these things. People who have a lot of Cancer or Capricorn in their chart can have a deep tie to ancestral themes and traditions and legacies. That's the area of the astrology polarities that really encompasses the themes we're talking about today. And I was actually just sitting down with my grandma. I just went home to Ojai to hang out with her. And I love just asking her questions. She's had the most amazing, fascinating life, from growing up in Thailand to going back to Germany to moving to the States. And she's just had one adventure of a life. And I love asking her because she is sharp as a tack. She remembers everything. And I love to ask her, Grandma, were there any people that showed mediumship ability in our lineage? Were there any psychics in our lineage? And what she says is that she wishes that she had that, but that she thinks it comes from my Yugoslavian side of the family, which was my grandpa born in Belgrade. And she was telling me that there were stories of my great-grandfather, speaking to spirits in Yugoslavia, and how, even before that, I think it was my great-great-grandfather. I don't remember where it was. I have to fact check this, but it was some sort of Prussian war or some sort of war where there were two brothers on my grandpa's side. And they said, if one of us dies in this war, the other one has to send us a sign so that we know. And one of my, I don't know if that would be my great-great-grandpa or great-great-uncle. I can't remember who it was, but one of my ancestors was sleeping in this barn, and his horse was tied up, and he just got this vivid image of his brother in his head that felt so real that it woke him up. And at the same time, his saber sword thing fell. And it turned out his brother had just passed in another battle and sent him a warning. The enemy was sneaking around the outside of this barn. And because he woke up with that vision of his brother, he was saved. So there's these really cool stories about how my grandpa's side was really into spirits and connection and mediumship. And that's where my grandma thinks that my stuff has been passed down. I do think there's a fair share of it on my dad's side as well, but maybe just not as developed. But specifically, the women on my mom's side have something, a little extra something. We just have a knowing. And my aunt, who was a guest in episode 104, is just so amazing. And my mom was super spiritual. My cousin's really spiritual. So it's so fascinating to me to not only look at our ancestry for our pain and our wounding and the trauma, but also the gifts and what's been passed down, who had a singing voice, who loved to cook, and how those traits live through us as gifts from past generations too.
I love that. Wow, that's so incredible. What a story.
I know. There's really cool stories on my Yugoslavian side.
That is wild. I love the idea of ancestry, and I'm someone who really did not have much of a connection to my ancestors because both my grandfathers had passed before I was born. My mom's mom is Dutch, so I probably met her twice. And my dad's mom was quite sick throughout my life. So I never really got a chance to connect deeply with them in life. And it's a beautiful idea to think that there is still a connection now, and also a space for healing, which is something you talk about a lot. I have a lot, I feel like I carry a lot of pain inside me, just in terms of the wounding of my female ancestors, and just female ancestors in general. So many of the women that came before us didn't get an opportunity to live the life of their dreams, didn't get an opportunity to shine their light as brightly as they wanted to. We were made to be so small and limited in our experiences. And you shared with me once, years ago when you were just starting your mediumship journey, we did a reading together and you talked about a grandmother energy coming through and that she was so proud of me and kind of elated to see the like free woman that I get to be in this life. And I think that's like such a beautiful gift that we can give our ancestors, particularly in the sense of being a female in this world, you know, like that I get to go to a music festival and dance with abandon is something that maybe my female relatives never got to have, or that I get to choose a romantic partnership that lights me up or choose not to be in a romantic partnership until one comes along that's worthy of my light. That was just not an option for my grandmothers, you know, like,
Yes.
that is such a beautiful place where I get to break that kind of like ancestral pain, but I also perhaps get to like work some healing into their experience, getting to see me living a life where I feel like I am shining my light and I am choosing to live the most full, expressed version of myself that I want.
Yeah. And that's so beautiful. And we are the living manifestation of everything our ancestors have put in to survive and progress. And everything we do that is in our power and worth is an honor to them. Everything that we do to be our highest self is an act of ancestral honoring, just in us saying, yes, I've inherited this specific inheritance of, you know, different pain, different likes, different dislikes, different inherited, you know, cellular memory, whatever it is, and doing the best we can to be authentic, powerful, brave, and in our power is already honoring our ancestors. And so you dancing at that music festival had a line of hundreds of women cheering you on and watching you there in such an amazing way. And it's interesting too, because, you know, with our female ancestors, especially, it was like impossible to not have a husband in the past. You couldn't work, you couldn't have a bank account. Like that was a form of survival. And so it was interesting because I was doing a reading with a client and she was like, I just don't get it. Like, you know, I'm living my best life. I'm happy. I'm thriving in my career. I'm living a life of love, but like this partner is not coming in. And the message that I got was basically saying, this is what you wished for. This is what a past life version of you wished for. You were so under the thumb of your husband that you felt like a prisoner in your own life. You had no joy, no freedom, and you were basically abused on every level by him. And you said, if I ever come back, I'm going to be free. And here you are. You are free. And that is what you wished for in the past. You might change that wish now, but there is some level of not taking for granted the freedom that our female ancestors could only have dreamt about. I have chills while I'm talking about it.
Yes, absolutely. You know, I think it can feel frustrating to, you know, want that partner to show up and not have them show up. I can relate. But yes, what a gift that I get to decide who and when I partner with. That I am not just being told it's this guy and he's your economic safety. And so you must say yes to this and make the best of it. You know, I think for all my desiring of a partner, I am eternally grateful to not be in a partnership that is dimming my light and not serving me. I would much rather be independent, still open to finding a partnership that will serve me, rather than being stuck in something that lowers my vibration and limits my possibilities, which was the truth for so many women for so long. You know, we are in a beautiful time period where we can make a choice versus being kind of pushed to settle.
Yes, to have to marry out of necessity. And I think that's something that, and I have so much empathy, and trust me, I've sat with so many clients navigating a similar situation. I know how painful it can be, but I think that's one of the silver linings of it is, but you're free. You don't have to settle. You can be in your power and you can trust that the exact right timing is already working out in your favor for that in a way you're not seeing yet. So powerful, and such a powerful image of all of our ancestors cheering us on. And even if we haven't met them, They know us, they've met us, because when we were in spirit, who did we pass by to come into this soul family? Them. They held us as a little spirit baby. So I think that's so beautiful. And I want to introduce our guest this week because I'm so excited for you guys to hear our conversation with her. It was truly, truly magical. This week we have Torie Feldman. She is the founder of Sacred Ancestry, a global movement of people connecting to their ancestors and healing their lineages. With over a decade of experience in the arts of healing, facilitation, and priestesshood, Torie weaves together spirituality, shamanism, mysticism, mediumship, womb wisdom, and ongoing study of mystery schools and cultures all over the world. She specializes in the intersection of ancestral healing, earth-based wisdom, and spiritual studies, helping people connect to their ancestors, trust their magic, and reclaim their spiritual gifts in a deeply grounded and embodied way. Her degree in cultural anthropology, alongside her year spent working on cultural revitalization projects on a reservation, deeply informs her work, grounding the esoteric into practical wisdom and ancestral healing practices. Torie offers ancestral healing sessions and leads group courses online year-round, including the Honeyed Womb, Lineage of Love, and the Mystery School of Ancestry. Enjoy this conversation. Torie, welcome to Magic Hour. We are so happy to have you here today. You are somebody who I've followed on Instagram for a while, and your kindness, your beautiful spirit, your generosity of wisdom just shines through your work in every medium. So I'm so excited to share you with our community today. Would you mind sharing your big three with our audience? That's how we always start the podcast: your sun, your moon, and your rising sign.
Absolutely. Hi, Taylor. Hi, everybody. I'm so honored to be here too. So, my birthday is July 23rd, which is the first day of Leo, according to most astrology. So, my sun is right on the cusp of Cancer and Leo, which some people know as the cusp of oscillation. So, it has the water and the fire, the moon and the sun. It's one of the most extreme polarity embodying cusps of the zodiac. My moon is Taurus, and my rising is Capricorn.
I was waiting for you to say either Capricorn or Cancer because that is the polarity that rules ancestry and our mother-father lines, our ancestors, our home. So I was like, where's the Capricorn? Especially, I mean, Cancer is like ancestor work, but Capricorn to me is so much about legacy and traditions and refining that over time. And so, yes, I love that big three. And yeah, the difference between Cancer and Leo could not be more great. So that makes a lot of sense. And the second question that I like to ask is, how does your intuition speak to you?
I love this question so much. I am studying mediumship and I'm a practicing medium. And one of my incredible teachers, Kai Corral, he talks about the many, many, many different forms of mediumship. And so a lot of people know clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairsentience, clairempathy, clairgustance, clairsalience. There are so many different clairs. And for me, there are so many more than that, right? Like an infinite list, and some that we probably don't even have words for. But for me, the deepest way that my intuition speaks to me is through liminal states. And so I enter into liminal states while my feet are on the earth, or while I'm drifting into the dream time or coming back from the dream time, while I'm drumming or while I'm singing or while I'm just closing my eyes and tuning in. And I really like to open all of my energetic channels. That's a part of what I do, and I guide people through ancestral healing work. Rather than being a medium who brings through messages from people's ancestors, I actually support people to open all of their clairs and to open to receive the guidance and the wisdom of their ancestors directly. So in that sense, I'm not so much an ancestral healer as I am an ancestral healing guide. And so I believe that we're all ancestral healers for our own lineage. And so my own gifts, there's so many. I also have, I don't know the exact word of this. It's kind of a combination of clairvoyance meets clairsentience, but I can feel feel physically where ancestors are in the space around me and where they are in the space around my client. And it's not as though I see them clearly, but I can feel where they are. I can see the shapes and constellations that they take around us as they give us healings or come into support.
That's such a beautiful description. I myself am a medium as well, and I'm extremely clairsentient. And I think that's pretty developed clairsentience is when you can feel and kind of mixed with some claircognizance and know where they are. And all of the clairs feed each other. So you said it's like where your seeing meets your feeling, and they all feed each other in this beautiful way. And something that just popped into my head as you were speaking was being a connector. It seems like you help bridge the gap between the people who are in this perception of time and the people who are their ancestors on other perceptions of time. And you bridge the gap because that consciousness never dies. It just takes on a new form, as every medium knows. And so I also really love what you said about everyone's here to heal their own family line. I think that's so beautiful. And I think the healing arts are starting to evolve in what encompasses them. So in medicine, we're starting to understand that trapped emotions in our body also co-create with illness. And in our emotional and spiritual healing, we're starting to expand to understand that just like ancestral illnesses can be passed down, so can wounds or personality traits that don't serve or ways of looking at the world. And so I think the work you're doing is so ahead of its time, and more people are catching on that this ancestral healing and being a cycle breaker and healing the ancestral line is such important work for the micro and the macro on this planet. And I find that these cycle breakers are born into the exact right circumstances that they're needed to be in, even if they don't see how yet. And so I'm wondering if you can just speak to that a little bit.
Absolutely. And thank you. It's so beautiful to feel your wisdom in your heart and your channel. It's just amazing. Yeah, so something that was coming through as you were sharing is that ability to share time and bridge time with our ancestors, which I really believe that each one of us innately does, especially when we connect to the ancestors and when we connect to our own future ancestor, because each of us one day will be an ancestor, whether you have children in this life or not. It's about being an ancestor on this earth for all of the future generations, including your lineage, if your lineage does continue. And there's this concept in anthropology. I studied cultural anthropology. I'm a humongous dork. I'm all about cross-cultural lineages and learning tribes and indigenous traditions and seeing these cultural patterns that emerge all over the world. And there's this concept in anthropology that's called ritual time. And it's a theory that I actually wrote about in my thesis, which was all about time. So I love that you brought up time. My thesis was a cross-cultural comparison between Western biased conceptions of time and Australian Aboriginal conceptions of time across all of their tribes, which there are 500 to 600, or there were. And they all had one main cosmology, which was known as the Dreamtime cosmology, which I don't need to teach in depth. But one of the theories that I used in my thesis was ritual time. And it's an anthropological theory that is also extremely deeply spiritual, and that I believe actually comes from indigenous consciousness. And this was just like the Western anthropologist's mind putting a label on something. And so this theory posits, and I believe it is true, that when we enter into ritual spaces, when we enter into spaces where we are calling in our wise and well-healed ancestors, where we are feeling into and calling in the future generations of this earth, it actually connects us in a bridge through time. And so the specific prayers that we say right now are actually touching those ancestors way in the past, not just in the astral, right? It's not just that our ancestors have passed and now they're disembodied. It's actually traveling through time to touch those ancestors in their actual lives. And that can create ripple effects that move through time and shift our entire lineage. And that also goes to the future generations. And this is especially true when we do acts that our ancestors did. So if we're doing ancestral dances that our ancestors knew, if we're actually walking in their footprints, if we're doing rituals to honor the high holy days of the year, such as summer solstice, winter solstice, the equinoxes, in a way that our ancestors practiced those rituals and traditions, it's actually, we are communing with them, not just in the spirit, but through time. And I also like to imagine that our ancestors, way back then when they were in ceremony, were calling upon the future generations and were praying for the future generations, and they felt the future generations. And so we're actually merging our ritual spaces together to create a larger ritual space. So that was just the first thing that came up, and I haven't even spoken to the ancestral wounds and the divine perfection, but
I love that. I love everything you're saying. First of all, that last sentence just gave me full body chills about us being the ancestors they prayed for. And I think on a human level, almost on a biological level, there's this subconscious drive to protect future generations. Like, I don't have kids yet, and I'm still making decisions in my life as if I had them. And so I think our ancestors were subconsciously driven to protect us, to make choices, to move to a better place with more opportunities. Like, everything they do is driven by love, and love is that bridge that links all timelines and dimensions. And Torie, if I may, I just want to tell a story that I've never told on this podcast that describes exactly what you were saying. Back in second grade, I was in a really dark place. I went to a very small school and I was bullied severely. And I remember there was this day where it's so embarrassing, but I like peed my pants and everyone was making fun of me. And I was like just in such a sad little baby place. And I remember so vividly seeing me from the future saying, "You've got this, like you're going to grow up to be a badass." And I remember that so vividly. And it gave me this feeling of like strength and empowerment of like, you guys just wait of who I'm going to grow up to be. Fast forward, I forgot about that memory after decades. I was like 27, 28, and I was doing this guided meditation where we send love to our child version of self who needed it. And I sent love to me on that day. And then it just clicked into place. Like, I'm who she saw. And that's just a micro moment of exactly what you're describing. But I've experienced it firsthand, where when we use our consciousness to go backwards or forwards on timelines, it does shift things and it is felt. And I think that that is just so beautiful.
Is so moving and so precious. Thank you so much for sharing. It's amazing to experience that within our own lives and then to zoom out and see that perspective of what's been woven through our lineage for thousands of years, or even tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of years.
It's interesting because in ancestral work, I've found that families love to cover up the less desirable parts of our history, whether that is slavery, whether that is an affair, whether that is like all of these things that people aren't proud of in their family lineage. And they push that under the rug and they say, we were the perfect family and we didn't do anything wrong. But those wounds and that trauma and that guilt and that self-loathing still exists energetically under the surface and is being passed down through every generation until someone actually admits it and calls a spade and heals it. And so I'm wondering, for people who maybe don't know much about their ancestry, or whose parents aren't very forthcoming, or might have been adopted and don't know anything about where they come from, that sacred liminal space that is that place of connection, can you maybe just speak to those people of where they can start with this work?
Absolutely. So I'm going to weave in your question from earlier and kind of answer both, because I really do want to speak to those wounds and why some of us were born into these families that have these wounds. So I really deeply, truly believe that we are more than just this one lifetime, right? Like, we are souls in a body. This is something that all of the ancient mystery schools spoke to. It's one of the deep pieces of wisdom that indigenous cultures all over the world speak to. And I'm guessing people on your podcast would agree. And so that would create past lives, future lives. And on the journey of our soul, it is said that before we are born, and this comes specifically from the tradition of Spiritism, that before we are born, we are actually gathered in a council. And in that council, we may have our guardian angel, our spirit guides, we have healed, wise, and well ancestors. I believe we also have lineage weavers who are responsible for who is born next into a lineage. And we gather with this council, and in a sense, in Spiritism, they believe that we actually present to them our outline of who we want to become in our next life, the lessons we want to learn, the people we have chosen as parents, the heartbreaks we will endure, the wounds we will take on that we are here to heal, and how this will actually help us on our journey as a soul. And some alterations may be made by the council, and ultimately this is approved, and we are born into this life. And I believe that there is this higher purpose, this higher vision, and that's not at all to bypass the horrific things that some of us have experienced in this lifetime, the things that our lineages have been through that we feel weighs like 1,000,000 pounds, like a burden on our shoulders. It's not to bypass that at all or to put a silver lining around it, but rather to empower us with the remembrance that we are souls on a greater and wider journey of evolution. And I believe that there is an exchange that happens between your soul and your lineage in this life. And a lot of people, when they're on the ancestral healing path, they find this fire and they say, I'm the one that came here to heal all that my lineage has experienced. I'm the one who's going to break these patterns to end this cycle. And so we clearly, many of us see how our soul benefits our lineage. And there is also how your lineage is in exchange with your soul. And so very often our soul will choose a lineage to come into that's not only going to help us on our soul's journey of evolution, but that's also going to mirror some of our soul's wounds that we've experienced in past lifetimes with deep ancestral wounds that are alive in that lineage. And so for many of us, our family is actually our chosen school of study. It is our chosen place that we came to this earth as a school to learn from. And the family that you were born into, in any way that you may have experienced your family or your life, is a curriculum that's here to highlight what you are here to heal, how you are here to evolve on your journey. And so there's a direct correlation to you healing your soul's deepest wounds from past lives and you healing your ancestral wounds. And there's this incredible pattern between the two of them where they impact each other. And so when you heal some of your deepest wounds in this life, it ripples out to touch your ancestors and it ripples out to touch your past lives. And it actually helps both you and your lineage evolve forward. And so that's just a little sprinkle of why, like what is the reason, right, that we are actually born into these lineages with these wounds. And then to answer your last question about how can one connect, whether they're adopted or whether they don't know where they come from or whether there are secrets that they don't know what happened in their lineage. First of all, honoring that genealogical consciousness is something that can be either conscious or unconscious. Genealogical consciousness may be passed down through the stories in your lineage, through saying, these are the names of your ancestors. You can build a family tree. Or it can be passed down unconsciously or subconsciously through your lineage because your genealogical consciousness of ancestral memory lives in your DNA in every single cell of your body. And so even for people who have no clue where their ancestors are from, no clue the names of their parents, grandparents, etc., you hold within you an incredible ancient library of ancestral wisdom that lives in literally every single cell of your body. And so that's a part of the work that I do is supporting people to activate that inner remembrance through opening their intuitive gifts, through communing with their wise and well-healed ancestors, not all of their ancestors, but specifically their wise and well-healed ancestors, in order to help heal those ancestors who are unhealed and to help heal those ancestral patterns at the root. And so a very basic practice would be for you to call upon your wise and well-healed ancestors and invite for them to walk with you. And there are so many ways that we can do this. We can envision a golden sphere surrounding us in all directions and invite in those wise and well-healed ancestors and ask that they please support you in releasing any energies from your sphere that are not healed and well. A lot of us have unhealed ancestors in some way that are actually hanging around in our life or in our energetic field and that are They can have lots of different relationships with our energy, with our wounds, etc. I won't go into all of the details, but it's very important and actually a huge moment of healing when someone, a divine descendant in their lineage, chooses to set those boundaries in a good way with those unhealed, unwell ancestors through building their connection to their healed, wise, and well ancestors. You can do this through this golden sphere. You can do this in communion with your ancestors by going on a walk in nature and inviting them in, honoring the ancestors of the land that you are on by name and asking permission, and going on a sacred pilgrimage, even if it's just 5 minutes from here or 5 minutes out in nature, just really honoring that time of deep, deep, deep communion and connection with them. And another very simple practice, it's the last one I'll name for now, is to write a letter to a specific ancestor or to a specific group of your ancestors. And so, for instance, you may feel called to write to all of the women in your lineage. If you could speak to them as though they are actually receiving this letter to each of their doorsteps, what would you want to say? Perhaps there's an ancestor in your lineage that you feel a deep connection to, but you don't know much about their story. You want to learn more about them, about who they are. You can write a letter to them and share with them, I want to know you. I want to remember what your life was like. Please come into my dreams. Please guide me through messages and signs. Please guide me in my waking, in my sleep, and in the in-between. And then we can also do this intuitively by feeling, maybe I want to write to my great, 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 great grandmother in my father's lineage. And so you might not know who that was, but something in you is like, I want to put this many greats, and I'm going to choose my father's lineage. I'm going to see what channeled message comes through. And so a lot of people speak about channeled writing, which is known as psychography. And a lot of people practice this where they actually allow a spirit to write through them, to bring through a channeled message. But what many people don't understand, and this is a teaching that comes from my beloved teacher Kai once again, is that psychography is actually an intuitive gift that goes both ways. And so it's not only that we can receive letters from those on the other side, we can actually also write letters to those on the other side. And when we pick up the pen, and we can actually do this, with a beautiful card that we've hand painted and an envelope that we bought special at the store just for them, that's a certain specific color, and a wax seal and a kiss, and with a candle lit, like you can make it this beautiful ritual, or as simple as opening your journal. What we don't understand typically is that when we are writing this letter, it allows for that ancestor through time to receive it, to feel it. And it's as though we're picking up the phone and calling them. It's like you're calling your great grandmother. And even if you don't get a message back immediately, the connection, the bid for connection has been made. And so that ancestor will very likely then feel that energetic opening to respond. And that response can come in so many forms, which is why we open all of the clairs and make specific time, set specific time aside to walk with them and work with them. And I said that would be the last thing, but the absolute last thing I'll name for now, because if we talk about an ancestral altar. And so my ancestral altar, for those of you watching on film, is right here behind me. And there's a lot. I could go into a whole class about, what to include and what things are best not to include. But I will share that just overview of an ancestral altar is creating it as a living portal to your ancestors and to the consciousness of your lineage. And so very often people create altars and they think, oh, this is beautiful, or oh, this is like an anchor point for an intention of mine to come to life. In many traditions all over the world, the altar is actually a doorway. It is a portal. And when we're at the altar, if we tend to it as a living altar, if we light the candle regularly, if we say prayers there, if we stand there and open to feel the energy, if we make offerings to this altar, etc., it's actually a place that the ancestors are constantly peering through, especially when the candle is lit, but it creates a doorway. And so this is part of why I have altars behind me that I tend to, and I have built deep relationships to over time, is because for me, one of the deepest messages that came through, specifically when I was on an ancestral pilgrimage, I visited 5 of my ancestral homelands in Europe last year. The big message that came through, if I could condense everything I've learned from the ancestors into one sentence that came from them. It is that you are never alone.
That's amazing. And so much of what you just said is like pinging at me to go in different directions. One thing I want to say is that to the people who might have secrets or were adopted or don't know, I personally believe that there are no accidents, and whatever we're working on to be our most empowered version of self is not an accident. It's most likely something inherited living in you that you have a choice in this present moment to become more empowered or in your worth about. So I think wherever your personal healing journey is going is probably a micro expression of the macro line. I also really loved what you said about how our soul's unique lessons and points for growth and experiences pick the family line that will best service what we need. I think that's so beautiful. And then I also found it really interesting what you were saying about the wise and well and healed ancestors versus the ancestors that are not in that energetic space. Because as a medium myself, I find that I connect a lot, of course, to both, but it's usually the ones who were misunderstood in their pain and trauma who come to me to either give an apology or say how their perspective has shifted on the other side. And I do believe once we cross back over out of our physical body, we have a different perspective, but that doesn't mean that the harm we've done while we were here doesn't exist. And so I've found, like in my readings, say, for example, I would connect with a grandfather and he was showing me that his dad hit him. So he hit his son and then his son hit. And I see the like ancestral healing is something that comes up a lot in mediumship because it's our actual ancestors coming to give us helpful messages. And so I find it really interesting how those misunderstood people often come with an explanation or apology. And they'll even say, I'm here as her guide now to help her attract the relationship she deserves or the love she deserves or not allow abuse into her life in any form. And so I found that sometimes the spirits on the other side with a new perspective, it's almost like part of their healing journey to become a wise, well-healed ancestor is guiding their predecessors to their healing work.
Yes, yes, deeply yes. And there are so many people who receive these visitations who have no clue what to do with them, how to work with them, etc. And there are also a lot of people who call upon their ancestors for guidance and for support without being aware that they're actually calling in all of their ancestors when they say that. And so it can welcome those unhealthy ones to come. And I fully, completely, deeply agree. And there's a beautiful just reciprocity, this reciprocity with those ancestors who come to receive healing and with us and the healing that we actually need. And so one of the practices in one of the schools of mediumship in which I study is after an experience of mediumship, going and sitting and asking, what is the message for me? And so, for example, whoever that soul was, perhaps it was a suffering soul, an ancestor who needed to give an apology, whatever it was that came to you, you may feel that you just helped them and what you were helping them with was just about them. But very often it's also something for ourselves. It may be seeking to give us deeper direction or a message that we need to hear or something that we can actually work on in our lives or an apology that we need to give to someone in order to heal something. And this isn't just if that was one of your own ancestors who came. It's like if you're giving a session too, and this is just for a client, you may think, oh, that's just for the client and just for that ancestor. And so there's this wisdom in the ways that we are woven, in who the ancestors guides for someone to work with, and which ancestors come and at what time, and how that ripples out to touch everything else in the relationships of their descendant, as well as the person who may be facilitating that work. And so there's this beautiful web of responsibility, reciprocity, and just a relationship with when and why certain things come.
Absolutely. And the intelligence of the spirit world is just astounding. It is so quantum, the way everything is layered and perfect, and there are no such things as accidents. And I love this idea of what you're saying, both with that channeled writing going both ways, and same with this, that any spirit that comes through, their message is bigger than just this moment. And we're all one at the end of the day. So of course we can take wisdom from everyone's ancestors on some level. I'm wondering, because you're unique in how you said your intuition comes to you. I've never had a guest on the podcast say in the liminal spaces, and I find that so interesting. And I'm wondering, those liminal in-between spaces plus mediumship equals trance. And I'm wondering what's your relationship to that word, that practice, or if that's something that you're maybe interested in.
So trance, I'm a huge etymology dork too. It's funny because it's making me want to look up trance, but I'm guessing that the root word of trance is related to trans, which means between. And so this is the realm in between, or this is the ability to go between realms, which is one of the descriptions, the job descriptions for witches, for oracles, for prophetesses, for healers, for shamans, for those who literally have a foot in both worlds. And so in that way, we become a bridge. We become a medium, right? A bridge goes between two worlds. A medium is, in two sense of the word. One is a medium is an instrument, right? Like if you pick up a pen, that pen is the medium through which you can write. Just like you and your body is the pen, you are the instrument through which a spirit can create, can sing, can bring through messages, etc. And also in the sense of the word medium, as it's not usually thought of this way, but it really is the in-between. It's like small, medium, large, like we are bridge, right? And I truly believe and feel that for those of us who are doing ancestral healing work, we are the tree, and the tree of life, the tree of lineage. The lineage is oftentimes in many traditions and cultures likened to the tree because of the roots of the tree. But what we don't realize, and this is a teaching that comes also from my teacher, Kai Carell, I really like to name my teachers and where things come from. The roots of the tree are your ancestors. The trunk of the tree is you here now, and the branches of the tree are the future generations. And part of the teaching of the tree is, in many traditions, trees are seen as doorways. They are seen as that portal between the worlds. They are seen as that bridge into the other world, into the other realms, right? And in many traditions, the tree is the axis mundi, the bridge between the worlds. And the tree, in many traditions as well, is the embodiment of the three worlds, the upper world, the middle world, and the lower world. Notice how the middle world is also the trunk. It's also us right here, right now. It's also the medium. And so as the trunk of the tree, standing tall, present in this moment, we have the power to draw and pull forth the wisdom of our lineage and to heal our roots, to heal our foundation so that we can choose which direction our lineage wants to grow into. And so the branches don't just go wherever they want to go. The tree might be growing in a certain direction that's maybe gnarled and diseased from the roots. And it is up to us to tap into the tap roots and to do that deep alchemy, that deep work, deep beneath the surface, deep in the DNA and in the bones of our body and in the memory of the earth of our body, to then choose, I'm going to grow towards the light. I'm going to grow in this direction. I'm going to shift the way that my family tree has been growing. And so as the medium, as the one who can enter into trance, as the one who can work with nature, work with the elemental realm, work with the tree spirits, work with the ancestors, we open ourselves for support and assistance from the entire ecosystem of the entire forest, of the entire village, of our entire lineage, to inform ourselves as the medium, so that we have assistance in where we grow and how we heal.
I love that so much. And I love the idea. The tree metaphor is just so beautiful, especially deciding which direction you want to grow in. I find that visual so powerful. And it makes sense because I love forests. Forests, enchanted forests are the most magical places on earth. And thinking of all of those portals and doorways just clustered in one magical location makes a lot of sense because trees are definitely super special and spiritual. I've meditated with the redwoods in Northern California, and they are just, it's such powerful energy. I want to circle back to something you just touched on, which is the etymology of words. And I saw on your Instagram that you said it's a really powerful practice to look up the etymology of everyone on your mother's side, their first names, because there are no accidents when it comes, and I believe this as well, there are no accidents when it comes to the name we were given and the bigger theme or message or something that we can find a pattern with. So I'm wondering if you can speak to that and the significance of our mother's side for us as women.
One of my favorite topics ever of all time.
Yay.
And just because we're bridging, no pun intended, from the trance state and from the tree, and we're talking about etymology, the trees being doorways, just like we spoke to, the ancient word for oak was dur, which is the root of the word door. That's the root of the word druid. So the priests and priestesses who gathered in oak groves on the Emerald Isles and in the Avalonian lineages as well. So I just wanted to name them and honor them in this beautiful 5-trunk oak tree that's right out my window, who I'm entering into a dieta with very soon. And so to return to the mother line, well, first of all, the etymology of our names in general is one of the most powerful keys and pieces that we can reflect on that will actually give us clues as to why we were born into our lineage and what is the specific medicine that we carry for our lineage, as well as what medicine that our lineage carries for us. And so first is looking at your last name. For example, my last name is Feldman. It's from my father's side, which is my Jewish lineage. So I could talk about this forever, but I feel a really, really beautiful piece to share is the etymology of your last name. So for those of you who want to go look up, type in on Google your last name and then the word etymology. So Feldman, it will say that it is the worker of the field, which for a long time I was like, oh, that's beautiful. I work with the earth. I love the earth, right? And the more that I dove into actually researching the rituals and the practices in my lineage, I was amazed what I found about Feldman that you never could find just by Googling Feldman. And so oftentimes the ancestors will take you on this journey through all of these rabbit holes of research or all of these realizations. And then one day you'll realize that's the true meaning of my name. And that's why I was born into my lineage. So one of the practices, the ancestral practices that comes specifically from the women in Ashkenazi Judaism is the women who are called Feldmestens, who, that means, by the way, cemetery measurers, cemetery field, like that was their word for cemetery, was Feldmesten, very similar to Feldman, Mesten meaning measuring. And so it was the most witchy ancestral practice of Judaism that I have found yet, where it was a group of women, usually in threes, this sacred number, right? Where they would go to their local cemeteries and they would take a ball of twine. The first woman would hold this ball of twine, and the second woman would hold some grass from the cemetery or a rock from the cemetery in her hand. And then there was a third woman behind them reading prayers. The first woman would pass some of the twine to the woman behind her, and she would touch the twine to the grass or to the stone, and then bundle the twine. And they would walk around the perimeter of the cemetery and measure the cemetery with this twine. And they would also measure graves with this twine. And then afterward, with all of these prayers being said to the ancestors, they would take that twine and use it as the wicks to make candles to put in the homes of the descendants from those ancestors as a protection. They were one of the only women during that time who could actually make money, and it was extremely taboo for women to have a job and for women to make money and for women to work with the ancestors and the dead and for women to hang out in cemeteries. It was literally, they were listed among the word witches, with all of these descriptions of who could be persecuted and who was a witch and who was a magic maker. And they would be hired and paid by families who, for example, were about to go into birth and they wanted a candle from their ancestors to be present to support them at that birth, or when there was a child who was sick and they wanted to call in the wise and well ancestors to help protect that child. And so my last name all of a sudden makes sense. It's not just the worker of the field, it's the worker of the cemetery. She who works with the ancestors. right? And so that's just a little bit into the magic of your last name. So an invitation for everyone to look into that. And don't just go by the literal definition of what you find. Go deeper into the metaphysics, into the spiritual, like Silverman. Silver is related to the moon. She's related to the feminine. Like she literally like a person who works with the feminine, or the person who works with the moon, is one interpretation of that magical name. And so I'll connect this back with the mother line. You can look at what was the etymology of your mother line's last name, and also what is your name if you were to take your name and make it into a sentence. I won't go into my first name, Torie. It would be another hour of me talking because it has many different meanings, but you can literally take your name and create a sentence. For example, one of my possible sentences is the dove of light who is like a goddess who works with the ancestors. That's Torie Michelle Feldman. And so turn your name into a sentence and see, oh, that's what I get to be for my lineage. Huh. And then you get to look at what was my mother's name and what was her mother's name, and what do all of the names in my lineage have in common if I were to find a thread. And as we know, for those of us who work with the mother line, it's known as the red thread. It's what connects womb to womb to womb to womb through time. And our womb is where our ancestral memory of our mother line and all of our ancestors lives, but especially the women. The womb holds the trauma, it holds the gifts, it holds the tears, it holds the aches and the joys and the unbirthed dreams, it holds the wisdom, it holds the medicine women, it holds the healers, it holds all life and all of your lineage in your womb, both the ancestors and the future generations. Your womb is that portal and that bridge between the worlds. And so the red thread isn't just connecting you to your mother, to your mother, to your mother. You're looking for that red thread as it stretches through the names in your lineage. My mother's lineage is Catholic. And what I found is that all of the names in my mother line are related to Mother Mary, who I have a profoundly deep connection to, especially after my White Rose Dieta, where I went very deep with Mother Mary. And now she's like if I had to choose a patron saint or a patron goddess, she is my patron goddess. And so I don't need to go into all of the meanings of all of the names in my mother line, but we can stretch back 7 generations at least. I think it is 7 generations or 9 in my mother's line, and all 9 of those names are related in some form to Mother Mary. So then you look into, well, what is the energy of Mother Mary, and what does that mean for my lineage? And so these are just a few examples, a few questions, a few exercises to start to get your mystical brain, spirit, soul opening to those deeper questions. And like I shared before, it's not always what you see on the surface. The meaning of their name means. Look into the metaphysics, look into the symbolism, look into the connections, look into what your ancestors' culture would have related that thing to. For example, if you get the name Marilyn, my grandmother's name means star of the sea. And if you look at what that is, you wouldn't know, star of the sea, that's interesting. What does that mean? That's actually one of the names of Mother Mary, is Stella Maris, the star of the sea. And she wears this blue cloak covered in white stars. And she often appears coming out of the ocean, which is connected to Yemanjah and many other cultures of goddesses around the world. And so the idea is to open your spiritual gifts, to listen deeper, and to connect to your womb as well as one of the main message carriers, because your womb is an oracle for your mother line and for all of your ancestors. So this can give you clues as to what medicine does your mother line hold, and also what wounds might your mother line hold, and what does your name say as the key to help that heal.
Yes, that is so, so powerful. Something that's really striking me about my own last name, my maiden name, is that it was changed at Ellis Island. My ancestral name was Hanan, I believe, and they couldn't pronounce it when my ancestors were fleeing the Holocaust. And when they came to Ellis Island, the guy behind him said, well, I'm Silverman. You can have my last name. They can say this. And we became the Silvermans. So I feel like it's so important to talk to the elders of our family so that these facts aren't lost and we can get more information and do our own digging. And I also couldn't agree more about about what you said about the womb space. Like, it truly is our cauldron of all creation. It is what links us to being able to birth anything. It's what makes us a creatrix, and this ability to birth our dreams into the world, souls into the world, whatever it is. And so I just found the way you spoke about that really powerful. So something that can be tricky with ancestor work is that if you're like me and you're a million different backgrounds, like I'm literally Yugoslavian, Russian, Ukrainian, Polish, Italian, Scandinavian, Ashkenazi, like I'm so many different things. That feels very overwhelming to me. How can people who feel overwhelmed by the amount of mix they have in their background start to approach this work?
Yes. So first, something is just pinging, and I'm going to listen to my intuition to speak to this, and I'll weave it into what you're sharing. I also want to specifically speak to Black and Indigenous people of color who have had the history of their lineages intentionally erased through time. And I really just want to honor anyone who's here, who comes from those lineages, who's listening, and to really deeply honor the grief, the anger, the hurt, the betrayal, the disgust, and to hold space for that. And so I just wanted to speak these words, and to anyone who's feeling that in their lineage, really just honor you in this moment, and specifically honor you for choosing to be the one who's here, who's listening to this with an open heart, who's choosing to turn towards that history and to say, ancestors, I see you. Even if I don't know your names, even if I don't know your stories or your history, you live here in my heart, and I'm going to fight for you, and I'm going to love for you, and I'm going to live my life to the highest expression of joy to honor you. So I really want to honor that. And to speak as well to those of us who have mixed lineages that come from many places. Many of us also have mixed internal dialogues happening between those lineages. For example, some of us may have DNA of both the colonized and the colonizer, or the oppressor and the oppressed, right? Both women who have been silenced and experienced domestic violence and horrific acts, and men who were perpetrators of those acts, who may have got those pregnant. And so I want to speak to this on those levels of nuance and complexity as well, that it's not always so simple as, there's so much possibility, but also there's the deep pain. And oftentimes we feel that there's this war that's happening within us between our ancestors who might not be at peace with each other on the other side. So I just want to name that, and also share that one of my very first rituals I ever did for ancestral healing was a healing between my mother's German ancestors and my father's Jewish ancestors. I felt a great contention between them. My grandfather, my mom's dad, didn't want to come to my parents' wedding, and he decided to the day before because she was marrying a Jew. And although I don't have direct ancestors in my bloodline that were a part on my mother's side that were part of the Holocaust, on my father's side, on the Jewish side, I don't in my direct bloodline, but cousins, aunts, uncles, we have many people who are lost there. There's still that energy right within me of, I feel those groups of ancestors who are crossing their arms at each other or pointing their finger at each other. And so first I want to speak to that, and that we can do this healing work and be a bridge of mediation and allow these ancestors to heal their relationships to each other, which ends the inner wars within us, which brings us into deeper unity on our path of healing, which allows for us to be an embodiment of peace on this earth, of peace between lineages, so that the internal war no longer needs to be an external war on this planet. So first, I just really wanted to speak to that.
I loved what you said about the way that we can feel that internal battle, because I, on the one side, also have my German grandmother who was born in Munich. Then my other side of the family was fleeing from the Holocaust. And so that interesting perspective of different sides of the conflict being within you. And that has always made me feel like I am that bridge for peace and healing and bringing the sides together through the love of my parents, which I think is so beautiful. But yeah, I think there can be those warring instincts when you have different ancestry with different beliefs and different backgrounds. So what would you say to people who feel that way?
Just as you put so beautifully, that you are a bridge through your life. You get to be the embodiment of love, and you can actually do ritual work to repair and make peace between these parts of yourself and these parts of your lineage. You can facilitate these conversations and this energetic peacemaking in your lineage, and that you are worthy of coming into wholeness in your sense of identity and who you are. A lot of people feel this separation from their ancestors, and like they want to distance themselves from certain ancestors who have caused harm. And that is healthy to a certain extent, because of course we need those healthy boundaries, as we talked about earlier. And that, just as we spoke to as well, there is a divine seed of why you were born into the lineage that you were born into. And a part of the reason that you were born into the lineage that you were born into is that you are meant to receive the medicine of those lineages. And I really like to say, one of my core teachings is that beneath every unhealed ancestral wound is an unhealed ancestor, which is an ancestor who experienced a trauma, their boundaries crossed, or a devastating act happened. And so it can really support us to shift the perspective and see that oftentimes the one that we are looking at as, let's just label them in a moment, but this isn't true, the one that we are labeling as bad, the ancestor who committed some horrendous act or who did something that brought shame to the family or shame to you, whatever it is, that ancestor that we are labeling bad is really the result of generations and generations and generations of trauma that caused for them to make that decision. And so what we do through ancestral healing work is we go back to the root of what was that original wound that caused that ancestor to experience that trauma, to then pass something down that today is manifesting in all of these symptoms that you might be able to see in your life, right? Like low self-worth, or not able to make peace within these warring parts within yourself. So to anyone who's feeling that, I would just say, and although this can be a challenging practice, is like, I'm trying to condense, I would usually guide people through journeys to do your best to start to shift your perspective of how you see those lineages. And rather than seeing them as bad, start to see your lineage as though you are gazing through the eyes of love, and start to have passion for those ancestors and curiosity around what made them need to be that way, and what was beneath that, and what was beneath that, and what was beneath that, and to tap into that core wound in your lineage and ask yourself where that core wound might live in you today. And that's why a lot of this is about opening all those intuitive gifts, is because this isn't written in a book for most of us, right? Unless we're one of the very, very few. This is something that takes deep listening, deep feeling, your intuition. And sometimes you might be like, did I just make that up? Am I crazy? And so a part of this journey is learning to trust, learning to listen, learning to humble ourselves, learning to discern, and learning to open our hearts like this blossoming flower of compassion, so that we actually have space to listen to the subtleties beneath the layers of how we might label someone as bad.
Absolutely. This is just such powerful work and such needed work. And I think people who come into families and feel like the black sheep, feel misunderstood, I think that just shows that you're the exact cycle breaker that family needed. There needed to be a new dose of consciousness. And I also I love what you said about holding your ancestors in higher love and compassion. Because if you're listening to this right now, if you're walking this path, if you're interested in deeper healing, then that shows me that you're in this higher minded, open place, and that you might be the exact person that your ancestors have been praying for decades, for centuries, to have enough love to say, I forgive you and I love you. And sometimes when I'm in readings and those spirits on the other side who have an apology or a more complicated message get that, that, it's not just healing for the sitter, it's healing for the spirit too, to just know you are forgiven, you are forgiven. And when those words by themselves, especially when they're meant in a full-hearted way, are such a release, a healing force that ripple in ways that you can't even imagine through the cosmos. So even just the act of forgiving, having compassion, loving your ancestors more is such an act of healing in itself and cycle breaking in itself from what's been held for generations. And it's not that we have it easier today, but our ancestors, everybody, no matter where you are in the world, went through hard times, had difficult things. It was much more of a brutal world back then. And I think us being in the place we are today with the resources, with social media, with awareness, we have the tools at our toolbox at our disposal a lot more than our ancestors did. And it's just so beautiful. And I think also it's interesting because becoming a mother, which I haven't yet, I think is a really powerful, and a father too, of course, is a really powerful point in this ancestral work, because you start to get more reflective of what do I want to heal in myself? What don't I want to pass down? And I find it uncanny in my own family and other families that I've observed how specific things replay themselves. Like I have lines of ancestors on my mom's side where the same exact story replayed over and over and over and over. And it's to the T, the same exact set of circumstances. And I just find it so interesting how circumstances were born with that ancestral programming, and it replays itself until we make a new choice, stand in our power, shine more love and awareness on the situation. And yeah, I'm spitting out a lot here, but I just find that uncanny pattern recognition with ancestral work as well.
Yeah, I wanna answer that question from earlier because it feels so juicy and alive. Like, okay, we got to talk about the things that the intuition is saying. And this question is so beautiful. It's like, if we feel that we have all of these different lineages, where do we start? What do we do? There's a lot to explore there. And this is one of my deepest passions, and really the deeper passion that fuels this work, along with healing the collective, is helping people to reclaim the gifts and the spirituality and the magic of their lineages. And so, first of all, on the first layer, to answer your question, if you have a lot of different lineages and you're like, where do I start? It's a little overwhelming. What is calling you in this moment right here, right now? Maybe you don't know why, but you just want to type in Yugoslavian folk traditions on Google to get started. It doesn't to be like, oh, I need to choose this because my mom is Yugoslavian and because I've had the mother wound in me my whole life. Maybe that's where your intuition is guiding you, but it could just be this random thing that pops in. So first, what excites you? What's calling to you? Have you seen anything recently pop up in your field around a certain lineage? For example, Poland, maybe some things have been showing up for some reason around Poland. Why is that? Start to look into it. It could be a message from your ancestors for you to go deeper. And I also want to speak to that earlier we were talking about the religions of our ancestors, Judaism, Catholicism, etc. And while we can look towards those religions for some of the ancestral wisdom, what I would encourage us to do is to go pre-religion and into more of the pagan folk traditions, earth-based traditions, the indigeneity of our lineages, before they were often made to convert or before they were colonized, right? And so for some of us, that means looking into the mythology, looking into the folk history, looking into the herbalism, looking into the forms of magic that they would have done, looking into what plants were there in my ancestral homelands. How did they work with those plants? How did they heal with those plants? What were some of the songs that they would have been singing and listening to when they walked through the town square or when they went to a party, or what are they called, a festival? And you can actually start to look. There's this incredible resource. It's actually a part of my free 5-day challenge that is this library. It's a map, a global map, and you can click on a country and it'll take you to all of the folk music that was made country, so you can actually hear and you can start to listen to the language of your ancestors as well, which even if you don't know the words, see if it activates something within you. See if you can feel the rhythms of the music. Dance to the rhythms. How does your body want to move? What ancestral memory is activated in you when this music is playing? And when you read the mythology, or perhaps you find a beautiful animated version of a certain mythological tale, what does it awaken in you? What does it stir? What does it mirror in your own life? Or if you don't relate to it, ask for guidance in your dreams. How does this mythological story create something in me? There was this beautiful, beautiful episode recently of The Emerald, which is a podcast I absolutely love, with Josh Schrei. And he talks about how different mythological stories actually are about a movement of energy. And so a lot of the stories and a lot of the different story arcs are actually representative of whether energy is about coming in, going out, coiling like a serpent, being released or purged. So different stories, even if you don't understand what they are or why you were guided to them, is going to be moving energy in your system, awakening some kind of remembrance in your cells. And then you can go from there. I'd love to dive into, like we shared, the etymology. Maybe you learn about a certain festival and you're like, what does this word translate into? That's interesting. It translates into this word. What is the meaning of this word? That's one of the ways my guides and my ancestors love to speak to me. And so you can each find what is the ways that your ancestors want to speak through you. Maybe there are certain things I haven't even named that you go, you explore, you find them, and you unlock all of those doorways of connection with your ancestors. And you'll find, I really love this quote from Hinduism, when you take one step towards Krishna, Krishna takes 1,000 steps towards you. And I believe the same is true for our ancestors. And one of the things around working with guides, around working with ancestors, when they are the healed, benevolent ancestors, is they actually need our permission to guide us. They're not going to come in against our free will. This is also from my teacher, Kai. He says, "It is the way of the darkness to act without permission. It is the way of the light to honor your free will." And so once you start saying, "Wise and well ancestors, I want to connect with you," and you start taking those steps, doing that research, going on these rabbit holes, you'll find that your ancestors take 1,000 steps closer to you. And it may not be in ways that you instantaneously recognize, but that you start to feel this deeper sense of ancestral remembrance in your body. You walk around more rooted, more centered in knowing who you are. You start to come home to yourself. Remember why you came here. You start to do more healing work and step into that seat in your lineage, as a healer in your lineage. And so lots and lots and lots that I could say, but I'll wrap it up there.
That's so beautiful. I really love that. And it sounds exactly like working with angels. That's the energetic guide that I work with the most, is angelic energy, and they'll answer the question you ask because they honor your free will. And so I love that the wise and healed ancestors are working right along with our angels in a similar frequency of unconditional love, and they're part of your team. So it's just another beautiful reminder of the energetic support around us always. I also just wanted to say I found this really interesting because, 23andMe is this somewhat new development. I guess it's been out there for a while. I would have a dream of this woman just standing in front of me, dressed in all white, and she would say the word strega. And I didn't know what that meant. And I looked it up and I found out it was the Italian word for witch, I believe. And I did not know I had any Italian ancestry. And when I got my 23andMe done, I found out I was part Italian. And it was almost like this, I have chills talking about it, but it was almost like this remembrance of like, you have this witch in your ancestry somewhere in Italy and she wanted to connect with me or was a guide for me in some way. And I never forgot that. And when we got the results, my husband's like 99.9999% Persian. And my results are like 1 million different things. But the Italian thing just floored me because of that dream. And that's what really resonated with me when you said, go with what's inspiring you right now. Go with what's calling you. Go with where you're being led. It's like, clearly that's a breadcrumb for me to follow and explore and unravel. And that's the way it works. Like I always say, you'll never miss a message that's meant for you. So when things are calling to you, when you feel excited, there are no accidents. And our ancestors, which are a form of spirit guide, communicate through curiosity, joy, excitement. So just follow that and it will lead you to what's next.
That is such an incredible story, an incredible dream. Oh my God. I'm so excited to hear more as you uncover more, and maybe you look into what are some of the Italian traditions of witchcraft. I have actually stumbled upon a website full of that, and I was like, man, if I had Italian ancestry, this would be where I would be hanging out. So I know that there's so much magic for you, and I'm excited for you to explore that.
Thank you. Thank you so much. This has been absolutely incredible. I could talk to you all freaking day. Can you please tell our audience of hummingbirds where they can find you and how they can work with you?
Absolutely. Hello, hummingbirds. Sacred Ancestry. So, yes, I'm the founder of Sacred Ancestry. I'm an ancestral healing guide, and I offer year-round online courses, including the Honeyed Womb, Lineage of Love, and the Mystery School of Ancestry, which is also a facilitator training and certification program for you to become an ordained priest or priestess in the Mystery School of Ancestry and become an ancestral healer. And you can find me at Sacred Ancestry on Instagram and at sacredancestry.com.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for being here, Torie. Much, much love. Welcome to Sitting with Spirit, my loves. Just buzzing after that interview with Torie. What a heart-opening conversation. I know you guys must have loved that as much as Claire and I did. So transitioning into Sitting with Spirit, it was interesting to me because with all the talk of mother lines and the red thread and all of that, I did feel a mother in spirit coming through who was coming through with her dad. So I felt a mom coming through with her dad. And keep in mind, if you can take some of this information, but not all of it, that's 100% a wink from your past loved one saying, we're bringing you these synchronicities. And so the feeling that I got was that there was so much love with this mom that she passed before old age. I feel like she was maybe in her 50s or 60s when she passed, like didn't fully make it to old age, and it was before her time. I smelled a very like flowery, light, clean scent around her. So I feel like she would have had her own signature smell or perfume that would be really significant. She was showing me butterflies as a sign, and she was asking you to make her recipes and to know that she was cooking with you. So there was something here about like, I don't know, it seemed like a muffin recipe or something mixing a dough in a bowl. And I just got this feeling of like, make her recipes when you miss her, because it's a way that she can feel really close with you. I saw an important ring from her that you might have had. It kind of looked like a more square stone. And so I feel like it might have been an engagement ring or a wedding ring, but it felt like you, the person listening, might have like a significant ring from her. For some reason, I was seeing caramel apples. I do not know what to make of that, but whoever this is for will understand that. I don't know if she loved them or she had a sweet tooth or it was something special, but I was seeing caramel apples. I was also seeing, and this felt more connected to her dad, a guitar around him being significant to identify him. He wasn't talking as much as her. He was kind of just showing up with her. And I felt like there was healing between them on the other side that maybe couldn't happen when they were both physically here. And I got the feeling from him that he was sickly and sick for a long time, but past of old age, actually outlived her. And so the feeling that I got is that there's this universal current of motherly love that this spirit is coming to convey. It's less about this one mother and more about how she's a messenger for this universal mother spirit that is available to everyone who is looking to either heal the mother wound or feel supported or reparent themselves. I just feel this unbelievable current of motherly love that exists in spirit for all, that is coming through as just this warm, warm hug. And I got this really beautiful message that when you get flowers from spirit as a symbol, that it is akin to when your parents throw flowers at you after a recital or hand you a bouquet after a job well done or an accomplishment. that's this way that this mother is communicating, that the universal mother consciousness is rewarding your progress and commemorating it in this way. And it feels like when you see flowers as a synchronicity, that's them giving you a bouquet as saying like, good job well done. We're recognizing your effort. Great recital. So I found that to be so, so beautiful when she said that. They were also highlighting the stomach area. So I felt like this mother might have had some sort of cancer or something in her stomach, because that was feeling really knotted up as I was tuning into her. But she's really here, like I said, as this messenger of love and support, and to realize that we've been in many different lineages in different past lives, and we have so many different mothers and fathers on the other side that are cheering us on throughout dimensions, not just the ones that we have experiences with in this embodiment. And there are such forces of love for us, support for us, and cheering us on the other side that we have no idea and can't even really perceive of while we're in a human body. So just know that, and know that there's so much support. I was seeing a star as a symbol, which is my symbol for hope, rebirth, guiding light. The star is the symbol that comes after the Tower card in the tarot. So after things kind of end or fall apart or unravel, the star is remembering your true north, finding your guiding light. And it was interesting because with that, I got this message of checking your definition of success. Is your definition of success and what your goals are for this life in alignment with what your heart is asking for and what your highest joy and alignment and authenticity? Or is your definition of success tied to what your ego thinks you should have? Because I feel a lot of people comparing themselves to a story of success that might be authentic for other people, or might be what their family wants for them, or might be what their wounds or scarcity consciousness say they'll be safe when they hit XYZ marker in the external world. But it feels like it's keeping you limited and stuck in a way that your angels are asking you to think bigger about what's possible for yourself, for what success looks like, for where you're growing. And the truest success is when we're living in alignment with what our heart asks for. That's true abundance and true success. And so there's something here about not letting our ego hold the reins as the architect of our life, letting our heart hold the reins as the architect of our life. Going back to that theme of ancestral wisdom, I also got this image, like right when I closed my eyes, of just hanging out in a hammock. And I found it to be kind of funny because it's like rest is a radical act for some of our ancestors who had to hustle and grind to just stay alive and survive through really hard times on planet Earth. And us being able to rest, to be still, to have the luxury to even have our basic needs met to the level where we can think about this healing work is actually such a privilege. Like, us as this generation, like I was saying in the interview, we have more access to tools than ever before. And it's no accident that we are the souls that chose to come in here and now to utilize them and to heal our ancestral lines. And so there's something about how our ancestors didn't have the luxury of time or rest or nervous system resetting, that many of them were in a perpetual state of fight or flight and survival mode, that even us, we might be addicted to that. We might have a hard time resting, and that can come from ancestral trauma of needing to survive and feel like we're always in fight or flight. And so I get this feeling in this message that allowing ourselves to rest is a radical act of ancestral healing because they never got to. And it's funny how so many of us don't allow ourselves to rest, judge ourselves, want to fill the empty space with something productive. But the act of rest is such a flex. If you can just embody that, you're, again, 100 women around you are cheering you on from your ancestral line. 100 men, whatever, are cheering you on. People that just didn't have that luxury. So everything we're doing now and progressing forward with our nervous system rewiring, with releasing past wounds in the body, all of that work is something that our ancestors are co-creating with us on the other side and leading us towards. And that simple image of just relaxing on a hammock is equally as healing as doing the deeper shadow work and all of that. Just that act of feeling in your worth, groundedness, and security enough to rest without apology, to let yourself just be a human on earth is so beautiful. And what I'm getting intuitively now is that that's how it used to be for our ancestors way before the Industrial Revolution. There were more times to just rest. And this is a remembering. Our ancient ancestors used to be in communion much more with the earth, with family, with friends, with community. And that now we are really reprogramming the ancestors that got the messaging during the Industrial Revolution and onwards that that was not possible or valuable. So that's what I have for you today. Let yourself rest. Let yourself follow your joy. Make sure your ego isn't always moving the yardstick past your reach so that you're always groping for more success and something outside of you and something to prove this worthiness that actually exists inside. And so if you find that to be you, know that it's a very normal part of living in this society, and check in with what your heart and your inner child say about success, because it's probably very different than that voice. And just know that this star energy, it's a time to shine your light. It's a time to have faith in miracles. And it's a time for just a rebirth into a more authentic chapter. So much love, everyone. Is there anything you want to add, Claire?
I just love that so much. It can be hard in this world to not just be so focused on how much I'm doing. And I saw a beautiful post recently that said, you know, your life's purpose is to be a human being in this experience, connecting with other human beings and enjoying the moment and exploring the moment you are in. So if you're doing that, you've succeeded. And I thought that was a beautiful way to reframe, you know, not that going for things that light you up and trying to create things or work hard at something is wrong, but knowing that that's only a piece of our purpose and that our main purpose is just being in this experience.
Absolutely. And even going after what lights us up in the present moment, moment to moment, probably feels really good going for those things, you know?
Yeah, that's right. If we can connect into that versus the idea of what we think it should be.
Yeah. And I think sometimes a pitfall with that can be, well, does that mean I should never do my healing work or the things that are difficult or confront? Like, that's not what's lighting me up in the present. But then the follow-up thing I pose to that is, what's more painful? 1,000 paper cuts of avoiding that work and staying in an unhealed narrative, or taking the plunge to love yourself enough to heal it? So it's uncomfortable to the wounded part of your consciousness, but it's actually exactly what your higher self is asking for in the present moment. So I just had to follow that up.
Yes, absolutely. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. Well, beautiful. Have a beautiful rest of your week, everyone. Much love. And thank you so much for being here.
For more information on Taylor and her work, go to angelsandamethyst.com or connect with her on Instagram at angels_and_amethyst. She is the one verified account with this name and will never DM you for a reading. If you have any questions about intuition, spirituality, angels, or anything and everything magical, please email contact@magichourpod.com. We will answer listener questions once a month in our solo episodes. Are you an aligned business owner that would like to advertise to our beautiful hummingbird community? Please email contact@magichourpod.com. Make sure you're subscribing to Magic Hour so you never miss the magic. And don't forget to leave us 5 sparkling star reviews. They help more magical people find the pod. Please screenshot and email your 5-star reviews to contact@magichourpod.com, and we will send you a free downloadable angelic meditation and enter you to win an angel reading with Taylor Page. The next giveaway will happen when we hit 111 5-star reviews.
Thank you for listening to Magic Hour with Taylor Page. Remember, you are magic.